me do this. Wait, what is this? What is happening? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. I still don't know how all these buttons work. Today on the show, I am super excited to bring back longtime friend of the show and friend of mine, Sunil Pai. How you doing, Sunil?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to see you again.
It is great to see you. I'm super excited to have you back on the show. I mean, for a lot of reasons. Like we have, I think, a really interesting topic today. And also, I mean, it's just kind of an interesting time right now. I know that you've got some big news. So why don't I let you share that? For folks who aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to tell us who you are, what you do, and maybe what's new lately?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Sunil Pai. I'm a software engineer, I guess. I people might know me. I spent a year on the React team, and I didn't do much there. I spent time in Oculus. That was a lot of fun. I worked in Cloudflare, and then for the last year and a half, I was building a startup called PartyKit, which helps you build collaborative, real-time experiences with like a new twist on it, basically WebSockets plus plus. But as of a couple of weeks ago, PartyKit was acquired by Cloudflare, my alma mater, and uh, kind of a speed run for a startup. And I'm now back in Cloudflare. I'm in fact like in the Cloudflare London office right now. I'm doing orientation sessions for the second time around, which is weird, but I'm like, yeah, okay, I kind of know all of this. So yeah, it is an interesting time for me, and a little surreal, but it's also such an interesting time in the industry to be working back in an infrastructure company on the kind of like very new problems that are around. And Yeah, that's what I'm. Also, I think I've been on Learn with Jason twice before. I think the first time we spoke about ES Build, and last time we
Mm-hmm.
spoke about PartyKit itself.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like I had a great time then. So coming back here is just the easiest decision for me.
Yeah, it's always a good time. I love I mean, I think, you are one of the people that I would put in the bucket of like tech futurists. Like you always seem to be looking at what's next, to the point that a lot of the time I feel like I don't quite understand what you're talking about yet. And that's one of the reasons I like having you here, is because it's fun to talk through these ideas and to try to imagine where the industry is going instead of talking about where we are today. But it's a really interesting time, as you mentioned, to be at an infrastructure company, because it feels like I mean, I guess we can start with a little bit of the recent news. So I think yesterday or earlier today, Vercel actually did a big walk back on the edge and was kind of saying like, hey, we were wrong about this. It's not good for what we thought it was good for. Which kind of caught me off guard. And so maybe we start there. Like you're back at Cloudflare, which I think is the OG edge company. Do you agree with the sort of sentiment that was in that post from Vercel about the edge?
One of the things I love is diving into nuance. By the way, first of all, big fan of Vercel and Cloudflare. This is not what I'm saying right now is not the opinion of the company, even though I think it should be. But it's not the official opinion. And I think the nuance is actually fascinating
Yes.
and very and coincidentally, and I swear to whoever's watching right now, we decided this topic like a few weeks ago.
We did.
It's just a
We
question of
decided this
timing.
topic months ago.
Right, exactly. So what happened was Vercel a couple of years ago, maybe I want to say 2.5 years ago, they introduced their new Edge product, Edge middleware or stuff like that, right? Which is, hey, you can write code in your Next.js app or any app where that code will run closest to the users that request it. So previously, a use case we have had for stuff happening closest to the users is a CDN, something that delivers your static assets. And that's always great. Like there is, let's be clear, like distributing like the static parts of your app all across the world closest to the users just means faster websites. Amazing stuff. But they're like, okay, you should also write code closest to your users. And Folks might be familiar with Cloudflare Workers, which is also a technology that does exactly the same thing. Where, hey, like it finds something incredibly close to you within a range of like 20, 30 milliseconds, and that's what's running like um, your JavaScript that takes a request and returns a response. The problem is that, like any technology, it usually starts off being marketed as a panacea, as a universal solution for everything. Run your React app here, run everything there. But in reality, uh, there's a nuance to that. So for the big one that they were talking about yesterday is your data is actually never going to be closest to the users. And if it is, it has its own trade-offs. So usually what you do is you take like one data center, maybe you're using AWS, so US East 1, somewhere near New York. That's where your database is. Having your database in one place has some good qualities. The biggest one being, oh, you don't have to worry about consistency. People who make requests to get the particular data, like they're going to get the same data because it's at one place. The moment you start having replicas of that data across the world, one thing that might happen is users who are closest to replicas that get data from there, it'll be a little faster, but it might be stale because the data might not have replicated from a source, from your US East 1 or wherever your primary part of your database is. And the second one, which is what I think Vercel are talking about, is, oh, if your compute, where your JavaScript, your server is running, is close to your users and your database is halfway across the world, and in a single request, usually in any non-trivial application, you make multiple requests to the database, right? Like you're like, okay, first give me the user data, then give me a product details data. And if these two are far away, that means the round trip it has to do it multiple times and it just gets really slow. So now a solution for it might be, oh, let's just push the data to all closest to the users. But it's much harder to push data like that. Like as I mentioned, there's like consistency issues. Folks might be familiar with something called the CAP theorem. There's a consistency, availability, and partitions, something. And you can never get like 100% score on each of those. You have to pick like a trade-off. So Vercel's talking about how no, like compute should be closest to the database. And you can use some of their newer technology. I think they call it PPR, partial pre-rendering of pages. And those bits should happen like closest to their users. By the way, this fucking ecosystem loves three-letter acronyms. Like every 2 weeks, there's a new one.
I think that actually kind of pokes at something that I think is my biggest challenge with this space, is that we seem to have approached it from the standpoint of like, we have to own the thing. And I think that's what drives to make the hyperbolic claims, is like when we talk about it, you say we pitch it as a panacea. It's because we look at it and we go, well, we need to be the ones who own, like, dominate this market. There's no room for anybody else here. So we pretend as a company that we can do everything. And we just hope that by the time the enterprise use cases come in and prove us wrong, that we'll already have gotten enough market share that it doesn't matter. Right.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And so this I think is like, and this honestly, this isn't the first time that we've seen companies like Vercel hit this sort of like huge sale, walk it back, huge sale, walk it back. And I think it's indicative of like an issue, I think, with front end tooling today, is that this has become a game that we play and it just burns people over and over again. But
it's the but go on.
Well, I want to steer. I don't want this to be like a, I'm not trying to trash anybody. I'm just kind of noticing a trend that I find concerning in the front end space. So what I want to talk about instead is like, what are the more durable concepts and the things that are going to continue to be true even once the hype cycle is down? And that's one of the things that I thought would be really interesting to talk to you about, because it's pretty clear that serverless is, it's been proven it's not a cure-all, but it is a very strong contender for a lot of modern app architectures. And so it's here to stay, I think. I don't think we're going to see serverless vanish as a fad. But it does come with a unique set of challenges. And that's a lot of where I think your headspace has been lately, with PartyKit and beyond. So I kind of want to talk about that. So digging into serverless as a concept, we've learned that there's no such thing as serverless. It's just somebody else's servers, and serverless. I think the famous one, I can't remember who said it. Was it Kelsey Hightower that said serverless isn't a technology, it's a billing model?
That's right.
Right? Like, what a brilliant way to put that, because it's very true. And so digging into this a little bit, when we start talking about what we're actually doing when we dive into this architecture, the way I've understood it is that you are basically paying to borrow the unused space on somebody else's dedicated server, where you can spin up on request and then spin down to zero when you're not getting requests. So the benefit of this, obviously, is you're not paying for unused server capacity. You're not paying for electricity that you're not using, like all the overhead that comes with like running a server at all times. Now, the downside of this is that in order to do that, spinning to zero means that your app needs to be stateless. So anything that you need to bring in has to be brought in at boot time. So you're reading from a database, you're reading from wherever, you got to read something off of disk. It can't sit in memory because there is no memory. You're scaling to zero. And then I saw you make this post about stateful serverless. And I like my first thought was to just kind of narrow my eyes and look at you a little sideways, because it didn't make sense to me. So I want to talk more about this. I want to get a sense of like, what did you mean when you were talking about stateful serverless?
At the risk of being the you should read my blog guy, you should read my blog. You should add a link to it later. But before I dive into it, like anything else, what I'm proposing is not a panacea. In fact, even if you look at like the Vercel messaging, and I think that Twitter Medium also makes them sound a little more absolutist than they are. Like if you take their position as an absolute one that they proposed yesterday, then what you should do is not really ever use Vercel at all. You should be renting a $5 VPS, and once you have actual users, you should get a massive machine, one for your database, one for your server. Attach it to like a literal like power supply, and that should be your thing. Like you shouldn't use Vercel at all, but that's not what they're saying. Like they're really opinionated about it, and they're like, it almost feels like they're swinging too hard back into the thing. So stateful, so using that as a launch off point. So like you said, the serverless model, I think AWS invented the term, I don't know, but the model is very much, the moment a request comes in, it'll literally spin up like a little memory space or whatever, and you have to write a function which takes a request and returns a response. What happens inside that probably asynchronous function is up to you. You can talk to your database, whatever, but it's a goldfish function. Like the moment it returns that, it forgets everything, and like the next function that comes in doesn't. Again, a little bit of nuance there with the way AWS does. Oh, you can keep a function warm. I don't know, whatever. But framing it as a billing model is very interesting, because now you have a billing choice affecting your software architecture. Before serverless was a thing, this was not how we wrote servers at all. You would write a node app, and you would use Express router, and you would literally run it, and it would be running all the time. Some very simple benefits of that architecture. My favorite one. So I used to work for an e-commerce company, and the homepage has banners, right? Like offers. They're like, oh, these are the current offers, etc. And you want to reduce database chatter in general, because it can like make your database fall over, especially when it's something that won't be changing for the next couple of hours. So what you do is you write some code that says, hey, when a request comes in for the homepage, I'll have a little JavaScript variable. That's what I mean by state. Like that's just it. I'm not talking about another database, like literally a const banners object. Okay. And you're like, hey, are there banners for the homepage in this object? If they are not there, go fetch it from the database, put it into this JavaScript object and return it. Okay. But if it's already there, just pick it up from the JavaScript object and return it. Like that's the simplest cache. I'm going to say cache. I don't know. That is stateful. That is stateful programming, right? Like you're actually depending on some state that persists across requests. This is amazing and that's, by the way, like such a great way to deliver a performance win for your e-commerce website, right? Like, because it's instantaneous, all the requests are so fast. But there are trade-offs as well, because you have to invalidate this cache. You can't keep it there forever. When they change the banners on the database, you want these people to you want the new ones to show up on the page. So either you have to manually restart your servers because the JavaScript state has to disappear, or you have a timer. You're like, if 5 minutes have passed since the last time you picked this up, then assume it's not there and talk to the database again. And now you have like a lever. You're like, okay, this means that any banner that we put in has a potential maximum of 5 minutes before it starts showing on the thing. So if you reduce the amount of time, let's say you bring it down to 2 minutes, it'll appear faster, but you get more chatter on the database. And solving this problem in a good way, speaking to your business, makes you a senior engineer, I guess. Whatever. Cool. And this is the way people did things for a long time. This is what Node.js was really good at, right? Like even PHP didn't do this. PHP, even when you were doing it older, it would spin up a new thread for every request, and you'd have to do a database, whatever. But having a model like this is great. Serverless came along and just completely removed it. Yeah, we can't do that anymore because, like I said, goldfish memory. Your JavaScript variables, any state you hold, disappears. By the way, feel free to use our uh, per API call metered Redis service. I don't know, AWS has like 40 of them. Every platform has 40 of them. Like some service that's like, oh, this is easy. It's not a full database, but you can use it almost like a key value store, whatever, which is fine. But what has happened then in the last, 15, 20 years since this has been around, is that programmers believe that this is how you write servers. And that's a problem. When people say you should just use a Ruby server or a $5 VPS, it's not just that it's cheaper, it's also that, yeah, you can write code as simple as it used to be and not have to worry about stringing together 43-letter acronyms. Okay. But it is a good model because it's, like you said, like it scales well, like you can run it anywhere across the planet. It scales down so you don't pay for unused time. So at this point, I'm going to jump into, I'm not really shilling Cloudflare, but I'm saying Cloudflare has a solution. I suspect that other providers will come up with some other version of this. Okay, so this is, right now, it's something Cloudflare does. I highly encourage other providers. They should absolutely implement something like this. It's called durable objects. Point of note, I don't like the name. It makes it sound way more exotic than it actually is. It's very simple, and that's why I'm here to like explain this extremely simple, great idea. The idea is simple, which is for a given ID, and we'll talk about what this ID can be, but some ABC 1, 2, 3. Instead of defining a function, you define a class. Okay, you define a class that has, let's say, a fetch member on it, or on request you define on a class. The first time, Cloudflare's durable objects have 2 or 3 properties to it. Okay, so the first time you make a request to this class, it'll spin up an instance of the class. It'll spin it up closest to the user that requests it, and it'll run it through that member of on request, but then it stays alive. This is where the magic happens. Okay, and it's a class, remember.
Mm-hmm.
So the second time a request comes for the same ID, it's alive. So you could, on the class, you could have an instance property is that instance variable. Like we said, like banners, that in your first request, you actually go out to the database fetch and like add it to it. But the second time you can return from that.
Okay.
There's no KV, there's no nothing. It's this is as simple as I can make it. Okay, like it just keeps it alive. Now, does it keep it alive forever? No. If there's like no activity for, actually don't know, a bunch of seconds, there's some nuance around it. It shuts down, but then the next request comes, it comes back to life, which is also quite nice.
And when it comes back to life, does it come back to life with the state, or it comes back and like reinitializes?
It comes back and reinitializes.
So this is sort of it's a middle ground, right? Like in the Express days, I would be able to basically guarantee that for as long as the server didn't restart, I
Mhm.
would have state in memory. Um,
Correct.
in serverless, I have I have a guarantee that there will not be anything in memory when the function runs. And durable objects is a way of saying that, like, most of the time, assuming the serverless function is busy, it will
Mhm.
have the data in memory.
Correct. A
Okay.
little nuance here as well. In our previous model, when we were writing Express servers, this thing that you mentioned would be true only if you were running a single process on that machine. The moment you're using something like, well, at the time I used to use NodeMon. I don't know
Hmm.
what other, these things that, because since Node.js is single threaded, you don't want it running only, it would not use the 16 CPU, core CPU that you have on your thing. So you usually try to run 16 of them so it uses all the things. Also, you won't be able to guarantee a request for a given ID goes to an exact process unless like you actually like write code for that, and that's like a whole other thing. So it's definitely still a little more powerful than that, but like you said, like
Hmm.
it's a middle ground in that the state might restart.
Right.
Conveniently, the code you write for the Express server, you have to write defensively assuming that it might restart at any point of time. So the programming model is actually still the same. uh, you know what? I should take this opportunity to say that there are a couple of players out there who are doing this thing where instead of shutting down the server, it actually hibernates the entire memory of the process and brings it back to life. I'll tell
Oh,
you the
interesting.
two
Okay.
that I'll tell you the two that I know of. I don't know if they're particularly big or popular. I just know they do it. One is called Golem Cloud. The other one are the Wasm folks at Xtism.
Yeah.
Great, by the way. One of my ex Cloudflare colleagues works there, Steve. He's great. So there's, by the way, so that means that there are solutions also in play that are being built that go all the way, which is like, oh, we have no requests. Let's literally do a serialization of the entire memory process, and when it comes back, you'll actually have that. If I'm right, I don't think you can write JavaScript for those. I think those are like Rust and other friendly languages, though I might
Well,
be wrong.
Xtism is like WASM, so you can write JavaScript. You just have to compile it over using Xtism to their WASM thing.
Oh yeah, right. That's right. They have a thing. But to be clear, amazing that we have a spectrum of solutions. As you can imagine, there are like trade-offs with each of these things. But that we are now expanding that space in between full server to full serverless, and that's,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that space is the stateful serverless thing that I want to talk to you about, and what it
Yes.
enables. It makes some magical qualities available. But this is the basis. Have I explained it to a point where you understand it? I guess.
Yes. I'm with you.
Amazing. Um, so we don't have to write any code. If you want to write code, we can write code, but it's
I think
fine.
it would be fun to sort of work through this in the capacity of like let's try to get to a working mental model of like how I would put this into practice. So why don't we go ahead and take that opportunity to do that right now? So I'm going to share my screen
Mhm.
and we'll get the whole screen in there. There it is. Let's get to a better view.
Oh, hey, that's my buddy Steve Manuel.
There he
Xtism.
is. Yeah, we just had Steve on the show actually, and we talked about Xism. So I dropped a link in the chat for anybody who wants to follow along. You can go watch this episode. It was super cool. We managed to get like a Go app and a JavaScript app speaking to each other in the browser, and it was really really cool. Stuff that I didn't think I could actually do. And it's maybe the only opportunity to watch me write Go code. Um, and then this was the article that you mentioned. I dropped a link to this in the chat as well earlier. And this is sort of what we're talking about today. And we are talking to you know what? I'm just going to go to your homepage because I don't know what the right thing to do is for sharing people's like social media anymore because all of them are bad. Um,
Fine, I have links to my socials on this. I need
yeah,
to
there you
write
go.
more blog posts.
Wherever you hang out, get in there.
By the way, I
Um,
think our ES build thing is on this. Yeah, by the way, that's how often I update my blog. Like the fourth entry is something we did 3 years ago.
I love it. I love it. Okay. And then one other thing that I want to note is that this episode, like every episode, this is the wrong place for me to try to do this. I'm going to go over here. and I'm going to click on the schedule because that's a short page. We've got NX and Netlify sponsoring this episode because it is being live captioned. We've got Amanda here from White Coat Captioning, taking down everything that we're saying and making it more accessible. You can find that by going to the link that is scrolling across the bottom of the page right now. I think we're picking up your hands again there, Sunil, on the keyboard. All good. So, all right, now that I've done that, if I want to actually build something using these objects, what do I do first? Like, what's my first step?
Let's open a terminal.
All right, I'm going to open up code, and we'll use this terminal.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna create a new project, I assume?
Correct.
All right.
npm create party kit.
npm create party kit.
Party kit at latest. I don't know if you have. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yes. Okay.
We're gonna call this one stateful serverless.
Mm-hmm. Pick the TypeScript starter. That's fine.
Okay. And we'll get into it. We'll open that one. And here we go. All right, let me actually get in at this so that we can see. There we go.
Cool. Let's open source/server.ts. Let's just start from that, I guess.
Yeah, let me make this a little bigger. Source server.
Awesome. We can actually make it. Let's start from something a little simpler. Just delete the on connect and on message like methods there. Let's just delete it completely.
Get them out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you unhappy?
Awesome. That's fine. That's fine.
That's just because we deleted all the properties.
Don't have a method yet. Okay, cool. So we've literally just imported a type definition for the server, and we've put a constructor. The constructor is passed an instance of what we call a room, the thing that's associated like with an ID. And we'll talk about those IDs later, but for the sake of the audience, so it's not confusing, it can be a product ID, it can be a user ID, it can be a game session ID. It's up to you to like define what to center your state around. That's all it is. Okay. A room is a nice word. It's like, oh, this is the room where we do all our stuff.
It's the room where it happens.
Right. Let's literally just do the example we mentioned. Add an instance variable called counter, initialized to 0.
Okay, so counter 0.
Counter 0. All right. Let's add a method called onRequest. Nice. Inside it, let's do counter plus plus. This dot counter plus plus, I imagine. Sorry.
Oh, right.
Right. And return new response with the value of this dot counter. Why not?
What don't you like?
It needs to be a string, so yeah, just wrap it in ticks or something like that.
Yeah, we'll do one of these.
Why is it still complaining? Oh, no, it's not.
It's not. Yeah, that was just because I can't write code.
Okay, so by the way, this is the example. There's a counter for an ID. Every time you make a request to it, who cares what the request is? It returns it. It increments it and returns it. This, by the way, this model is so hard to do with something like AWS Lambda right now, right? Or even like a plain Cloudflare worker.
I saw that post. I'm actually going to pull that up because I thought that was really interesting to see the contrast, and it also explained something that because I had kind of in my head I had this thought about like why don't I ever build stuff like this? Oh my God, you post so much.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Where the hell is it?
It'll be down there. You need to keep going.
Here.
Oh, that's the one.
So this was the breakdown of how you set up a WebSocket.
So if you want to do a WebSocket that just broadcasts messages to other connected people, like you send a message and anyone who's connected gets the same message back to them, it's called a broadcast, by the way. Like it's the simplest most common use case for WebSockets. Like, oh, it's the basis of everything. It's absolutely mental how you do this in Lambda.
Yeah, because it's not just Lambda. It's Lambda with API gateway, which goes into DynamoDB, and then we have to send a query for every single message
To get
for a list of
which
current clients, and
clients.
then right.
I
Which
saw the
is,
sample project. It's not fun.
and like the structure of this isn't the sort of thing that it doesn't sound that wild when you think about why, like how they got here. And I think that what makes it challenging is that it becomes very clear very quickly that this is not what Lambda was intended for. Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sort of the, it's not that Lambda is inherently confusing. Lambda is super straightforward when you use it what it was built for. But so many of the things that we work on just don't, like, we twist them to try to be something that they're not. It's sort of the nature of the web. And I think where something like PartyKit even comes in is like, we were all doing this a very hard, bad way, which created space for somebody to come in and actually solve the problem as a first class use of the tool.
That's right.
So, okay. So we've got that.
So we will work
instead.
ourselves up. We will work ourselves up to that use case. Okay, but this is just a simple one, the counter. Okay, so you have saved it. Run npm run dev in your terminal, I guess, just to make sure it's running locally.
Okay, so localhost 1999.
Open up. So that's the thing with the way we do URLs. So open it up to /party/abc. Okay. /party/abc. So it takes ABC as the ID. So this is now centered around that. So you're seeing the number 1. Now start refreshing the page. Like, just keep refreshing it. Every time you refresh it, it updates. Open up this URL in a new tab.
Let me see. Oops. Nope. What am I trying to do right now?
It's trying to print. You will see the same number. It's not a major thing. Like, every time you refresh, it's the equivalent of doing that anyway.
Why can't I remember what the
Command T?
add split view? Jesus Christ, that was what I was trying to do.
I see. Refresh it in both. Oh yeah, see, you actually saw it. I think like.
Oh, interesting. You see that?
And like come back.
Wait, yeah, like
you refresh, it synchronizes to the same number. We haven't done the thing with WebSockets yet where it does it live yet. We will get there. But the important thing is here that it's actually sharing state. Like, it's getting, every time you make a request, it gets the latest count. This thing. Amazing. So in this choose your own adventure journey that we're having, would you like to solve it so that it persists even when the server shuts down and goes up, or do you want to just go to the WebSocket stuff? Let's do the WebSocket stuff. Huh?
Yeah, let's do the WebSocket stuff, because I think that'll make it more interesting when we get into the shutting down and starting again.
Awesome. Okay, cool. This is what we're going to do. We're going to add an onConnect method.
Okay.
Connect. What you're going to do. Okay, so onConnect is called anytime a WebSocket connects to this instance. By the way, so the interesting thing here, I mean, it's the magic, but really the simplicity of it is that every WebSocket for this given ID is going to connect to this exact same process, this stateful thing that is alive. That's why it's awesome. So what you can do here is onConnect, say, you might not need an onConnect as well. Delete the onConnect, and we don't need an onConnect handler. Leave it as is. It's fine.
Who cares? Get it out of here.
Who cares? Make an onMessage handler. Let's write code that gets triggered for every message that comes in. Okay. So onMessage, if message equals increment, the string increment, let's say.
Okay.
This dot counter plus plus, and this is my and inside inside the
inside.
inside the thing itself, you can say this dot room dot broadcast this dot counter. Again,
Why are you
want
mad?
to make that a string. Here,
Type
you want
number
to
is
make
not.
that a
Oh,
string
right, got
again.
it. Got it. Whoa, what am I doing right now? Stop hitting every one of those buttons immediately.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cool. Again, the code is as simple as it is. Anytime a client sends you a message saying increment, you're going to update the counter and broadcast it to everyone. Nice. Now open up client.tsx. I think that's a client file. You can see that we have import party socket. That's basically it's a thin layer on top of like web on top of WebSocket, which by the way you can use a plain WebSocket as well. Why I like party socket is it's a small 2 KB file that does reconnects anytime a connection drops. It buffers messages, just a bunch of nice things, but it's a drop-in replacement for like WebSocket stuff.
And it's like for anybody who hasn't written their own WebSocket, it's just worth it. Like the amount of effort you'll spend when you find that like we're getting intermittent disconnections or like why did this WebSocket suddenly stop receiving messages? It's because of just goofy, weird network stuff that if you know to check for it, it's easy to check for. But if you don't, you have to wait till it breaks and then you have to figure out why. So just use Party Socket. Like it'll make your life easier.
Okay. 100% drop in. Like, so like, by the way, I think that's been one of the bigger successes of like the PartyKit project, just having a better WebSocket to do stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Let's remove that function from 12 to 16. Let's just delete some code and make this simple. Then let's remove everything below. Let's remove everything below 24. Like, I think you should be able to delete, yeah, that entire bit. And let's remove whatever is inside that add event listener. That's where we're going to do stuff. Okay. Cool. Now inside the, so to explain the code here, party socket, we have a connection to an app element, which is just literally a div on the home on the HTML page, nothing fancy. It's just literally got get element by ID. Thanks, Mr. VDog. Mr. VDog gets it. So you see that I open up a connection, which is just a new party socket to that host, and like my new room just works. Now inside the add event listener, every event that comes in, say output.innerHTML is equal to event.data. Okay.
Easy enough.
We should also put in, add a line underneath 8, which says, hey, const button is equal to document.getElement by ID increment. This is breaking every accessibility rule, by the way, but we'll do it anyway for now. Increment. Nice. I think HTML button element. And you say button.onClick, I guess, or button.add event listener onClick. Click, yeah, that's right.
Then we're going to say connection dot send.
Beautiful, yes.
And increment, right?
Amazing.
Look at us go.
Look at this go. Fantastic. We could also do a thing for initial state, but let's keep it simple. I think you want to also open up index.html, by the way, so that we can add that little button element. Yeah, okay. Right underneath the div, outside the div.
Oh, we don't have an output. So we need our output.
Yeah, that is the app element. Yeah, you can delete that code.
Or wait, are we?
Did we say
app? Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking that it was called. Okay, I got you. Okay. So then we're going to set up a button, and the button is going to have an ID of what did we call it? Increment. And we'll call it type button. Why not? And then we'll say increment.
Yeah.
Okay. So then
I want to say we are done. Maybe are we?
Let's find out.
Let's find out. So just you can just open up localhost 199. Thanks, Darshak. You get it. It's enough abstraction without feeling like magic.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Welcome to PartyKit.
Okay.
Welcome to PartyKit.
Okay. What?
Look at that.
What?
Okay, now I can break it though. If I refresh,
No,
it takes one
it's-
click to get us back in
it
sync.
does, because we don't load an initial state when we do that.
Right. So to
Which
do that,
we
we would just on connect send this dot thing, right?
sure, yeah. Why not? Why not just send an
Yeah.
increment
I
every
mean,
time you connect?
how straight, like it's so straightforward that it feels like it's silly not to, right? So we can
Sure.
on connect, not that one, on connect, and then we would say,
Just broadcast the thing. You just broadcast to the entire room. Well, connect maybe. Why not? Okay, yeah. Do it only for that connection, because
connection dot
sure.
send, and then we just send this dot counter.
Love it. Ooh,
Right, and then it. Oh, do I need to?
No, I think that should work.
Well, it won't send. I guess
That's
it will,
fine.
won't it? Yeah, it will.
I think it's fine. Let's see. Let's try it out.
All right, here we go. We're gonna try. Look at us go.
Well, look at it.
And we can make that a little bit less ugly by getting rid of this bit here, so that that's not like we don't get that flash. Otherwise, beautiful.
Love it.
Look at us go.
Okay. By the way, just I want to point out something right now. We have already solved that AWS Lambda tweet thing we saw. It's done. The whole you spending a few hours and setting up 4 services and figuring out how it will cost you. No, like you wrote some code that just works. You can now broadcast messages to all connected stuff. People are saying such wonderful stuff in the chat. I'm reading.
Isn't it a great chat? I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think I have the best chat on the planet.
And by the way, I'm so happy to be taking credit for all of Cloudflare's work here, because
that's, I mean, as is tradition.
As is tradition. But let's just go back to the code for a second. Okay, like let's go to the server. I want to like. I feel like there are hooks for, like, those are lifecycle hooks. Whenever a message comes in, whenever a fresh connection is made, there's also an on start asynchronous function. Like if you need to like pre-load your state with something from a database, you can do something there, and it's asynchronous, which is super nice. It means and it like holds, like it keeps, if WebSocket connections are coming in, it puts it in a holding pattern until on start is finished. There's on request. It's fairly, like, it's straightforward. Like I don't think I introduced any new computer science concepts here. By the way, the whole broadcast thing, somebody might be like, well, broadcast does a lot of complicated stuff in the background. But I added broadcast because it turned out to be so common, everyone doing it. The implementation for broadcast is a for loop. The room is literally holding all the WebSocket connections in like an array. And anytime you call broadcast, it just does a for loop on it and sends the message. Like it's like one line of code that does that. This is what stateful serverless can do. So this server will now stay alive while there are any live connections to the thing. That's the nice thing about WebSockets, by the way. If there's a live WebSocket connected to this, the room will actually stay alive, and it scales nicely as well. Do you want to try deploying this and throwing the link into the chat and seeing everyone click increment?
Yeah, let's do it. So for me to do that, I run
npm run deploy. It might ask you some GitHub around you. Maybe it'll work. Oh, you've already logged in with PartyKit at some point.
I am logged in with PartyKit, yes.
This is a first-time deploy of this specific project, so it'll take 2 minutes because that's SSL. My job description doesn't involve making DNS fast just yet, but I'll work on that like later. But while that's happening, we can chat, I guess. Yeah, try opening it. Yeah, it'll take like a minute.
Okay, so we'll just wait a minute for the SSL to provision.
Yeah. So this is, look, for the last year and a half, I've been talking about multiplayer and CRDTs and building game servers and collaborative text editing and AI agents. And while it's all very impressive, something that took me a few months to realize is that not everyone knows what's going on in my head. And I was like, oh, I need to like explain the fundamentals for this first before I try explaining everything else. But whatever you've seen right now, this is the core foundation for everything on top of it. Everything else is just npm install library and do stuff. You want to build a workflow engine that updates in the background, you're kind of set. You want to build a collaborative shared text editor like Google Docs, yeah, use YJS libraries and wire it up to an editor. But at the core, it's this space that can spin up and stay alive while you do whatever it is you want to do. And it spins down when you're not using it. It doesn't make serverless. There are trade-offs, and we can talk about the trade-offs as well.
Yeah.
But to go back to where we came from, this is not a panacea. Like, don't rewrite all your serverless functions for this. Serverless functions are great for so many other things, right? Stuff that just has to read from a cache somewhere or serve like a quick request and API endpoint. Who knows? Like, those are great. And there's a set of trade-offs there. You should look at stateful serverless as a new tool, as something that lets you do things without having to lean on one of these extremes, your $5 or $500 VPS or AWS Lambda or even Cloudflare workers. Suddenly a brand new tool that lets you do all these magical things.
Yeah. So as we're talking about these, like maybe one thing that I'm thinking of is we're sort of deploying like a counter, which I think is it's the canonical example of how you show somebody how this stuff works, and we're going to add the durable objects to it. But when we start thinking about these in practical terms, like what are the use cases that you think this really shines for?
Let me start with a couple of my favorites. The one thing that over the last year and a half, a lot of like literal kids show up in the PartyKit Discord, and they're like, hey, we built a game and it works really well, a multiplayer game. And it suddenly strikes me this, okay, which is that WebSockets landed in Chrome in 2009. The spec was in 2008. So it's 15 years since WebSockets have been in the browser. So teenagers will try to build like a game over the weekend, and it'll work locally on their laptop or machine or whatever. And then they'll look at what it will take to deploy it onto the internet. And then they get into this, because serverless doesn't solve the problem, they need to like provision machines. They need to provision machines across the world. They need to use something like Redis or something else to like do like WebSocket synchronization to make sure it all ends up in the same process, etc. What started off as a weekend project has said, and they need to hire a bunch of senior engineers to maintain these clusters. So shipping this weekend project suddenly becomes a multi-million-dollar investment. And they're like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Don't get me wrong, like part of it is a hard distributed systems problem, but it's not a mistake that it's taken trillion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar companies to build Google Docs, Figma, AAA game studios, anything like a shared text editor type thing. PartyKit like inverts the physics of it. Like this is not a user-land solution. Like this is a new infrastructure primitive that's so freaking cheap. I'm glad Cloudflare acquired PartyKit because trying to build revenue on a cheap service is a bit of a challenge. It's cheap and it makes it accessible for everyone on the planet to build stuff like this. So the one that I'm really almost proud of and is my favorite is people building game servers. Hey, you want to build like a quick game? Either it can be as simple as a game like tic-tac-toe or a 3D fighting game set in like something else. Like there are people who are running like full game engines inside of these PartyKit rooms.
Yeah.
Where people are collaborating and fighting. Right, so that's one. The second one that a lot of people are probably familiar with is how do you build Google Docs? Shared text area. And in that same space, how do you do collaborative drawing spaces? Is it working?
It is working.
Let's just try it out, make sure it's still working. Oh, it's still
right,
fast.
Chat.
By the way, look at how fast it synchronizes across those tabs. It's not peer-to-peer. Let's
Right. This
go.
is
Let's.
this is browser to edge node to browser.
Okay, everyone's clicking the button. There it goes.
There we go. Has somebody set a loop up already?
Probably, I wouldn't be surprised. Look at it go.
And then as I refresh, we can see that it just keeps on ticking.
Yeah.
Right. So this is, to me, this is the fact that we kind of built that as an afterthought as we were chatting through these use cases. I can't really imagine. I worked on real-time apps back in about 2015. It was one of my very first React projects, was trying to put together what we wanted was like presenter software so that the leader of a group could run a workshop and people would be able to watch and see like the leader's video and a slideshow, and we needed that all to sync. So I was into like the WebRTC stuff. I was into WebSocket. It was a nightmare. Like everything was buggy, everything was flaky. Even the idea of building this reliably was like a multi-day stressful thought. And we just sort of did it. Like we were like, oh, whatever, it's fine.
And it's like production ready, scales across the planet, yada yada. But it's nice, it works. So building something like Google Docs is 3 or 4 hard problems in one. The first one is the infrastructure, which we have claimed to have solved with PartyKit. The second one is how do you make sure that when you're both editing the same block of text, this is making me nervous, by the way. Can we like move away from seeing this number incrementing?
Yes.
Well, we don't have to share the screen.
We'll just go back to this one. My safety.
Cool. So the second problem is how do you make sure you're seeing the same thing? So let's say you're editing a block of text and 2 people are editing the same word at the same time. Okay. It's not enough to just do what we did, broadcast changes. It has to do with like timing the state that's on the front end versus the back end. It's a synchronizing problem. Mm-hmm. There is a wonderful, wonderful open source library called YJS that solves this problem. It uses a data structure called a CRDT, and I'm going to attempt to tell you what the full form of that is. I think it's a conflict replicated data type, something. CRDT, whatever. The point is, it takes all these changes and it puts some funky math algorithm on top of it, and it makes sure that you're seeing the same thing in a bunch of places. This is built by a guy named Kevin Jans, who spent the last few years of his life on this, building this wonderful open source library. It's so good. So one is that it implements a hard thing, and the second is that the ecosystem around it is amazing. So there are a lot of web-based editors. You might have heard of Prose Mirror, Code Mirror, conflict-free replicated data types. I was close enough. It's fine.
You were in the ballpark. It's fine.
In the ballpark. Thanks to whoever answered that. There's a crazy ecosystem around that, which is amazing. Like the community is amazing. Like so, lexical editor, draft editor, slate editor. So if there's a web-based editor, there's a YJS backend for it somewhere. Okay. Writing a YJS backend in PartyKit is about 4 lines of code. We don't have to do that right now. It might take this thing, but I'm so proud of that. So I took YJS and I built like a PartyKit wrapper around it, and I put it out there, and suddenly people show up in the Discord. And in fact, like one of my favorite things to do is I would be having a call with a potential user or a customer, and I'll be like, do you want to do this on the call? Like, do you want to just build and deploy this to production on the call? And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. It's one of my favorite feelings, saying, yeah, let's just copy paste this, deploy this, point your thing to it, we're good to go. So what used to be something that would take a Google to solve is what everybody now has access to. The reason I bring up text editors is because it's adjacent to another hard problem, which is collaborative drawing. And that's where PartyKit was born. PartyKit started because after I left Cloudflare, I was looking for interesting problems. I was hanging out with the team at TLDraw. TLDraw is, again, such a wonderful, free as in beer, online drawing space. In fact, the demo now that we can do is literally, let's just go on to TLDraw for a second and mess with it if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
Open tldraw.com, hit the share button on the top right.
Oh, wait, let me open a new thingy.
Yeah. Hit the share button. Don't copy the URL into the chat, okay? You never want an open text area or canvas space. I know your group is wholesome, but there is always that one person. So copy that link and share it with me. By the way, and remove that QR code like really quickly from the screen.
Okay, how do I? There we go.
Okay.
So let me throw
Twitter DMs or something.
Throw it in the private chat here. There you go.
Oh, okay. Sweet. Okay. So pick a pen tool and start drawing, I guess.
Let's see if I can do the Steve Ruiz.
Not even a little bit. Bro.
Not even close.
He's just too good at it.
He's like way too good at it. It's so irritating.
What I want you to note is, I hope you can tell that the bits that I'm drawing, let me just change my color, aren't being batched or anything. They're coming in, I assume, as smoothly as I'm drawing them.
Right.
Okay. Previous to durable objects and the new tech that has popped up, this is now a multi-month, multi-million-dollar senior engineer, almost a PhD level project. Like I said, like YJS and stuff like that. But inside PartyKit, we built a prototype of this in a week, and we were in production in like 6 weeks. This is where PartyKit was born. I was like, hey, I think this might be a good idea for you to do multiplayer. I closed the window, by the way. I might, and to go deeper into it, it was with 3 people, and none of whom are operations experts, DevOps experts, or anything. I mean, they have a genius with David Sheldrick, who built the custom sync engine that runs, that does all the fun CRDT-ish stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing that you could build a world-class experience like this for a small, I mean, I call them a small team, but they're a team with taste and excellent engineering abilities, means that anyone can do it. In fact, you can now take TLDraw as a component, wire it up to PartyKit, and like get this thing deployed in like minutes. It's amazing.
Right.
That is another favorite use case of mine. A couple more. I don't know how much you want me to go into this.
Well,
another thing.
Let's do the. I want to make sure that we get the durable object implemented before we run out of time. So I want to pull us back so that we can persist our count between reboots.
Amazing. Let's do that right now.
All right. So I'm going to pull us back into the code, and I'll just start us up npm run dev again, and nice. I'm ready.
Okay, let's go back to the server. Okay, so the problem we have is that this state is now like in JavaScript memory, which will disappear when the server shuts down.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an option of now using a database if you want to. But what's fun about these objects is that they come with their, like each instance, like per ID, each of them comes with like a little key value store. Like its own storage for like, you don't have to use like a database for like a bunch of use cases for this use case. Mm-hmm. So anywhere you have like this dot counter, instead read it from room.storage now. So let's open up the on connect again.
Okay.
And instead of saying this dot counter, say await this dot room dot storage dot get counter. Like literally inside that.
Let me pull this out. Okay, so current count is await this dot
room
dot storage
dot get counter. Maybe when it starts off, it won't have any value at all. So maybe you want to say or 0. Cool.
Okay.
Connection.send current count, which is also make it a string, I guess.
Oh, right. Gotta be a string. Okay. Okay.
One second, I want to make sure. Wait, get counter. Yeah, I think that, okay, yeah. Now let's.
Do you mean to write promise void? Isn't that what I did?
Oh, remove the void or, because it's now an async function, like the first part of it. Yeah, just remove it. Cool.
Got it. Okay.
Let's go into the on message thing. You can remove the on request stuff, I guess, for you.
Oh, right, because we're not really using that anymore, are we?
Right. So there you can say await this dot room dot storage dot put counter value.
Okay, so we're gonna say const. When I do.
Just do an update. Like you don't need to do.
Okay, so this dot room dot storage dot put counter, and this counter plus plus.
Well, we don't have a this dot counter anymore. What would be a good way to do this? Oh, you need to actually get the current value. Okay, sorry, you actually do need to get the current value before putting it. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do current count plus 1.
That's right.
What are you mad about?
Because it thinks it's.
Oh, hush you. Now what are you mad about?
So in dot get you can pass. This is just TypeScript. Why don't you just say as number for now?
Yeah. Leave me alone. Be nice to me.
Exactly. Okay. Delete this dot counter plus plus. Let's just since we're not doing that, and broadcast current count plus plus. It's fine.
Ooh, does that? Wait, hold on. Does this like store?
Oh, it will. It will. Yeah. So you want to just send current count. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it has to be.
Oh my God.
TypeScript, man.
Just be nicer to me, TypeScript. Okay.
This should. Maybe this should do it.
That should be it, right?
I think so. Let's try running it locally.
Okay, so we should have local going. Oh, but then it breaks, so we're not getting. Something is not right.
Can you do just a console.log of what current count is?
Yeah. Console.log current count. Current count. Always comes back as
did
1.
We do I know what the problem is. That should be plus plus current count, not current count plus plus.
Right, because we want to do it on the before we write. Okay.
Refresh the page. There we go.
Okay. There we go. And now if I stop this and start it again, we should still have the values?
Actually, maybe try it.
Let's try it. Okay, so I've stopped.
Local dev, which
I'm starting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, neat.
So it does do that. Okay. It's because it's storing it locally on disk, and when you deploy it onto Cloudflare, it'll store it in the room. Oh, why the plus is in front?
Yes.
Linda, that's because JavaScript is a pain. So if you pass it current count plus plus, it would give you the value of current count to the function that called it and do plus plus afterwards. Instead, if you do plus plus current count, it does the addition, the increment before presenting it to wherever it's being used. I actually don't like this behavior about JavaScript.
That is definitely one of those behaviors that I like. Okay, I see why you did that, but come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay. Is this using Wrangler?
No, but it is using the core of Wrangler, which is the Cloudflare runtime workerd plus a thin layer called Miniflare. Wrangler has like a bunch of other things. By the way, I wrote Wrangler. Well, I wrote a big portion of that Wrangler as well, but then of course the team has done so much more after that. I will still take credit for it. That's just how I am. but I did build like my own layer, and the reason for that is that PartyKit adds a bunch of boilerplate, and it talks to the API and makes using durable objects like a lot simpler. Durable objects would be like extremely low level, and you have to learn about durable object migrations and the way they do bindings. And I was like, wait, I can get a computer to do that, and literally built a company on top of it. So no, you can call this like, it's not Wrangler, it's close to it. In spirit, it's close to it. And now part of the journey that I will have in Cloudflare is to see how do I bring those lessons into Wrangler and the rest of the stack. But you see what's going on here, which is
Yes.
if you're persisting it to disk, and by the way, that disk is happening literally in the same space that this instance spins up. That's why it's so fast. And it's per room. Like if you open it up for another ID, like it doesn't share the storage.
Got
But
it.
it means that the moment that this room wakes up, it can pick it up from disk, and you can persist any like local state like that. And it's a very simple get put. There are some other, like you can list all the keys that you have used. You
And
can
so
delete
is
keys.
this the durable object?
This makes it durable. Yeah, this is the part that makes it like
Got
durable,
it.
durable.
So
Uh,
when would this value clear? Like, is the only way that it'll clear is if I manually clear it?
that's right. Or you delete
Okay.
the entire durable object binding. There's a way to do that as well. Which is to
Okay.
say, if you if you deleted the project, it would disappear.
Got it. So basically what this gives me is for my individual rooms inside of my PartyKit server, each one gets a key value store that's unique to the room.
That's
And
right.
what I mean by room is here we're setting this, but like if
Mhm.
I was using a JavaScript router, I would probably like earlier you had me go to /room/abc.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
I could set up something similar where it was like my app /session/ whatever the ID is, and then that ID gets used as the room. So each ID gets its own durable objects.
100%. Now you
Got it.
can see how this works with when you clicked the TL draw share button, it generated a random ID, and that is the ID under which all this code like runs. When you make a game session, you'll spin it up and you'll invite a person to join your session on a particular ID. If you're using this to build, for example, you want to synchronize state between, like you're writing an app and you want to synchronize it to all your devices because we live in a multi-device world. Um, uh, then in that you'd use the ID, like literally, and any device that's connected with that ID, it would synchronize state. If you're building a workflow system, every run of a workflow would be one of these IDs, and underneath it, you would have all these results. Just a very simple, powerful primitive against which you can do like other stuff.
Yeah. So a use case that just got brought up is like, would a common use case be lazily writing to the database as well so that we could get the state back after the durable object has died?
100%. To be clear, like the durable object is not just the storage, it's also the code. That's why I say like the name isn't like great. But yes, you can use this to like write to a database as well. So what you can do is you can use in memory for like a bunch of like fast stuff, or even like that room.storage. But either every 20 seconds, you can like push stuff to a database. Whenever on whenever everyone disconnects, you want to like flush everything to the database before it disappears, etc. You can write the code. Yes, the answer is yes, and the answer to how is, oh, you'd get to decide because you write the code that does it all.
I mean, this is really cool. Like I love the core concept here that is basically when I'm in this session, I can use this key value store to have extremely fast reads and writes to memory in a way that will still be present even through a restart of the room.
That's
Um,
right.
if I need to then move that somewhere else, like I can see, if I'm running like a SaaS app, I would have my user accounts, which might be coming in from Okta or Clerk or something like that. So there's data there that has to be synced up. I might have, project data in Postgres or MySQL. I might have, other data in different places. But the active session stuff needs to be faster than like a database read halfway around the world. So I can let the user do things that are live synced instantly through these durable objects. And then, as you said, when they disconnect, we have a hook for that on disconnect. Or is it on close, on disconnect?
Yeah, basically like on connection, which is a WebSocket, you'll say on close, run some code.
Right. So we can
Yeah,
run
on
this
close.
on close here, and we can say
Yeah.
when somebody closes their connection, take all the current state and write it back to the database so that when it opens again, we just pull that state back in. And you basically have like, yeah, this is a really, really powerful model for things that need to be very fast.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
like you said, it doesn't feel, I don't know, I was expecting there to be more to it. Like I'm
No,
very pleasantly surprised that this just kind of worked. That's always a
actually,
good feeling.
I'm still surprised, but I think I'm surprised because of the trauma of like doing serverless programming, despite having literally built this myself. Like every time it works, I'm like, wow, okay, that was like 8 lines of
Oh,
code.
what?
Okay, I guess this is going to be a really short learn with Jason session.
I mean,
So hmm?
like this is perfect. I think this is exactly the sort of thing that I've wanted to exist, because I like what I like about the serverless model is it's a very clean, it's like a clean slate sort of approach, where things that used to kill me in Node and stuff like that were like slow memory leaks. And I don't know if it's my code or if it's one of the dependencies I pulled in or whatever, but I noticed that it starts out and I'm using 20 megabytes of memory, and I check back a week later and I'm using 500, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just have to reboot the server. And then you're looking at cron jobs to reboot your server. And it's like, well, at that point, you're like stateless anyways, because you're
Yeah.
rebooting your server every day to avoid the memory leak. So that's silly. And so then you're okay, well, but stateless, you don't get memory leaks in stateless as long as you don't let a process run away with your serverless execution.
Mhm.
So you just run it. And like you said, it's a goldfish. It runs, it forgets, it runs, it forgets. But the issue of database stuff, like when I want to pull something in, like I have definitely written serverless functions that read from a Postgres database, and they take like 2.5 seconds to run. And that, like, is at the end of the world? Absolutely not. Like, I've used banking apps. It's still fast by that standard. But it'd be cool if it wasn't that slow. And the
Mhm.
fact that we're doing, when we look at this, the fact that this is actually a like key value store read write happening,
Mhm.
and it's this fast with the server round trip. Because remember, this is not peer to peer. This is, I
That's
click
right.
in this browser, it goes to the edge node, it writes the data, it reads the data, and then it sends the data back here, and then this one updates. That's ridiculously fast.
I, I, I just want to answer the chat message here. So you could get the initial info from a DB, do all the live stuff local, and then just take the local state at the end and send that back to the DB to update. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, like it is that straightforward. Like there is no, you don't have to come up with a complicated architecture here. Everything is happening in the context of like this class that's going on. One of the tricks that I like doing is inside that on close function, I check to see what the length. You can get a list of all active connections by calling room.get connections, by the way. So you say this dot room dot get connections. It's an iterator. So what you want to do is spread it inside an array, by the way.
Right. So we would get like const connections equals, whoa, one
Dot
of
dot dot this
those.
thing. Okay. And then dot length of that gives you how many active connections there are. What that means is I will flush to my database only when this is zero, like whenever the last connection like leaves, then do something to a database. Oh, such a lovely, simple model. Oh, I love it.
I mean, this is really, really interesting stuff, right? And like another way that you could do it too is we know who the sender is, right? Because we have the current connection. So we can also, like, if for example we were hooked into user accounts through some auth provider, we could use the connection to store any session data to our user, like our user was last seen at, and throw that in, right? So little things like that we can do that like it historically felt so hard to do, and yet here we are, 2-3 lines of code, and we're just like, yeet, there we go, it's
Yeah, you're
done.
eating it. Uh, I'll, there are a couple of, I don't want to go into like features, but
Mm.
one of the simpler things, let's say that you want to, how would you even do this with like serverless? I don't know. Okay, I want to save all the data to my database every 30 seconds.
Hmm.
So how would you do it with this model, I guess? Like, what is your first thing that comes to your mind?
I mean, my initial thought is that we would want to set up some kind of, I mean, can I just do this?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Just have a
Yeah,
stupid set interval that you call every 30 seconds that saves to database. Yeah.
right.
Probably
And
better to
then,
put it inside the constructor. Like you don't want it to have the set interval to start on every WebSocket
oh,
connection.
that's true. Yeah, we'd want it down
There you
here.
go. And yeah, if you want, you can. I'm just saying, like, this is ridiculous that we're even talking about this. Like, yeah, just put it in an interval and like run it. Clear the interval whenever connection. I don't know, whatever. Like, you can write all the code that does whatever. Uh, this is why I keep talking about like foundational, like primitive, like low level stuff. You can have a conversation on Twitter about, oh, Edge is bad, serverful is good, Node.js is good, and it loses like so much like nuance when suddenly a primitive like this comes along and says, I assume you want to ship a feature to production today, like let's just get to it.
Yes. Okay. So you just articulated something that I think is so important, because there are tools that have entered my world that I feel like fundamentally shifted the way I think about delivering code.
Mm.
Um, for example, when I first started using a component-based framework, it fundamentally shifted the way that I thought about writing code for the web. When I first learned about Git push to deploy, it fundamentally shifted the way that I thought about building for the internet. When I learned about decoupling front ends, it fundamentally shifted the way that I thought about building for the internet. And this is another one of those moments where I'm thinking about using real time in a way that
Mhm.
before it was always like, yeah, maybe someday if I have like income and it's like, we can afford some employees, we'd look at this. But like now it's like, oh yeah, that could be a day zero feature because it takes so little time to set up.
Yeah,
Um, like this to me, and in combination with the fact that now we've got things like, the database as a service that does feel just as good as, writing to a JavaScript object. Really, if you look at how some of these things work, it's pretty incredible how much we can do as front end devs without having to step too far out of the JavaScript mindset. We just get to build stuff now. We just get to ship stuff now. And so the limit is becoming less and less, can the tech handle this, and more can we imagine what it would work like.
that's exactly it. This is why I don't know if you notice this, but I bet you do because you're also one person who does this. I don't involve myself in the discourse on like social media. First of all, the medium is not very good to have like discourse. Uh, but also everyone uses it to like score points and tell you how smart they are. How look at how good I am at this advanced technology. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, like the most complicated thing I can think about as an API for this is like a class. Let's just do that. No one is talk like and like ship and like I have like movies to watch and like guitars to play. I have no time for the rest of your this thing. So
Well,
it's interesting times.
yeah, and I think, I mean, this really does strike at the heart of something that I've been feeling for a long time, which is this sense that I feel like as an industry we've sort of lost sight of why the code is cool. We spend too much time trying to like prove why a certain tech is superior, but we're trying to prove it on like esoteric academic merits as
Mhm.
opposed to looking at what we're shipping. And the whole point of this, is that we are trying to deliver something valuable to the people that whoever our audience is.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I feel like if I had contractors coming into my house and instead of building me a new kitchen, they were arguing over whether or not they should use like a certain type of wood or a different type of wood, it wouldn't take very long before I would want different contractors
That's
because they're not
exactly
doing the
right.
thing I hired them to do. They're
Yeah.
wasting time on details that don't like they matter, but they don't matter enough. Right.
Yeah.
And like obviously if one of them is arguing for like building it out of dry pasta and one of them is arguing to build it out of wood, that's a very different thing. But at a certain point, like,
Yeah, let's
oh,
just take a call. Yeah, like, yeah.
it doesn't matter. Like just go and build me the thing and it's going to work. And like the differences are so academic once you get past a certain point that it's not important anymore. And I think that this, again, going back to the very beginning of this call, one of the things that I think we've done is because the fact that we've got so much venture capital in software now, in dev tools in particular, we can't talk about things in like practical terms anymore because that doesn't drive revenue. So we have to talk about them in hyperbolic terms because we need people to think that one solution is bad and the other solution is good, when really it's a hammer and a screwdriver. They solve different purposes. They're for different things, but ultimately, if you're not using them to build something useful, you're just collecting crap and not getting anything done.
There's in the musician world, there's something called GAS, Gear Acquisition Syndrome, which is you buy all the best guitar pedals, you buy like a room for all your guitars, four different amplifiers, you take pictures of them and you share your opinions about how warm the tone is and where the exact knobs have to be, etc. None of these people actually play their instruments. I say this because I'm one of those people, by the way. Like disposable income goes on like little gadgets that I can feel really good gathering dust on the shelves. And we almost do that with like NPM libraries.
Yeah.
And then like we go on Twitter and we talk about it. We're like, no, look at like the shiny NPM library that I have. By the way, it's the best. And if you don't like it, you're a bad person, Jason. You're so bad. Like
this like cuts me to my core. I really don't like that so much of the industry has become about identity. Like, are you the right kind of developer? Are you associated with the right group of developers? It's like, yeah, we build for the web. Like at the end of the day, we're rearranging dots on a screen. We are not cool enough to have cliques and like in groups.
yeah.
We're glorified dot rearrangers. Like it's fun, and that's fine. We get paid so well to rearrange these
Oh my
dots.
God, we get
But
paid so
taking it
much to rearrange
seriously,
dots.
like taking it this seriously just hurts my heart. Like we do a fundamentally silly thing for money. And if we treat it like it's silly and fun, this is the best job in the world. If we treat it like it's somehow tied to our value as a human being, though, you're just in for a bad time.
Yeah, you will never be happy like if you become that person.
Yes.
Cool. That's yeah.
Well, your connection or
What
my
next?
connection is starting to give up. So I think that might be a
Did
good
you
signal.
freeze? Did I freeze?
One of us froze. I'm going to guess it's you because the chat's still rolling over here.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry.
At the end of the day, we're Lego connectors. I love that as a quote. That is excellent. And what's up, MetalX? Welcome to the stream. All right. So with this, I'm going to play us out because this was super fun. I feel like I learned a lot. And now I have a new tool in my belt that I'm very excited about. So where should people go if they want to go deeper on this? Let me start pulling up some links.
So partykit.io, definitely. We have docs, we have starter templates. You can literally run npm create partykit in your terminal right now and like make a project. We have a Discord. I love my Discord. It's again linked to on this page. Also, by the way, this partykit, the page itself is a multiplayer thing. You can see a Voronoi diagram if you move your mouse across it. I just love it.
Yes, you can see the play happening here, and I like that it shows where people are coming in from too. I think this is really
we attach
fun.
little flags as well.
Yeah.
By the way, that's one of the fun things. But you'll notice that it didn't ask you for location permissions. So once you have like a network that's so well spread across the world, each of these requests just tells you which data center pop it's coming from, and it's scary. Well, it's obviously accurate. Like you're like, yeah, we know which country you're in. It actually has information down to almost the neighborhood you're in. But I figured that would freak people out if I started putting this on here. But yeah, it just works. Like we can add like flags.
Just show everybody a picture of their front door.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, oh look, like it's a little mirror, a brown mirror app.
That is
So the
absolutely
Discord,
terrifying.
I am personally on at 3.1 at Twitter. As you know very well, I have a screen addiction problem, so you can find me there or on the Discord. Build something new, show up, share it with everyone, make it open source so that everyone can build, and let me know. Yeah, I'm excited to see what you've. Look, I'm working at like a level at like a dev toolsy level because I think I'm too old to come up with great like ideas now, and I now lean on the rest of you all to like take this stuff and build amazing things on top of it. I'm very
I mean,
excited to see.
we all need the foundation so that we don't have to learn how all of this stuff works. I think I'm grateful that I never had to learn how punch cards or bytecode work, and
Yeah.
I think I'm even more grateful that I didn't have to learn how to make WebSockets reliable. So
Oh, it's so
I'm very
fun.
grateful to builders like that.
By the way, I have
Or
to tell you, like once you start hacking on like stuff with PartyKit and like uh, WebSockets, it's addictive. Like it's so much fun. You can build like so many cool things. Just go for it.
Very much agreed. All right, so let me do a quick shout out again to our sponsors. We've had Amanda here with us today from White Coat Captioning, taking down all these words as closed captions, which are available at the link that you can see scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And that is made possible through the support of our sponsors. We've got NX and Netlify making the show more accessible to more people, which I very much appreciate. We've also got a lot of good stuff coming up on the show. You're going to see Brandon Roberts here on May 9th. I have other shows that I need to get up on the site immediately because clearly the schedule is not complete, but they're coming. I'll get it done. You can get on the Learn with Jason Discord if you want. If you want to keep up on what we're doing here, make sure that you like and subscribe and do all the things on YouTube, on Twitch, and whatever, to make sure that you know, if you're enjoying yourself, like, let other people know, right? It helps me out, it helps you out, it helps the community out. We're all going to have a little more fun together. With that, thank you all so much for hanging out. We will see you next time.
Thanks, folks. Bye.